here, and today I'm super excited to be talking to you again about how to make a full 1605 style techno track. I'm going to be showing you a bunch of new stuff, as well as expanding on some stuff from the last videos that I made on this style. We're going to be talking, if you don't know, about the style of guys like Space 92, Cosmic Boys, myself. I'm also released on the label. And yeah, as usual, you can get the full project files, samples, MIDI, presets, everything like that from this video is available right at the top of the description on my Bandcamp. It's a really great way to support me if you guys are enjoying these videos. And yeah, let's dive in. Alright, so here's the track. We're at 131 BPM. You can see the arrangement here. I'll talk a little bit about that first. So the thing to notice here is right up here are sort of like all our main synths. Like we have our lead here, we have like this little vocal thing, the string, arp, even this bass and the break here. But you notice none of that, save for the arp, is happening in the intro. And even when the arp comes, it's very sparse. So that's the first thing that's really important to keep in mind with your tracks. It's like, you know, when you're making a track like this, the intro is really to like establish the groove and establish the drums. You're establishing that in this part so that then when you get to this part and you add like your crazy lead and all the synths and all that kind of stuff on top, it's gonna feel like kind of primed for it. Like the listeners are going to be ready for that moment, essentially, because you've already set them up for it, because they are so used to the groove that they've heard in this part. And also, of course, you know, you want to keep this part pretty open for DJs as well. If you have too many synths here and effects and all that kind of stuff, it's going to get in the way of that. So just kind of like keeping that in mind. We're establishing the groove, then we have a little break to have some cool musical stuff, and then it's the same groove but now with cool musical stuff on top of it. So, now, for the first sound we have up here, it will be the kick. You can see our kick is 3 layers. We have our main kick. There's a nice, fat, punchy kick. This is one that I made for this video. Then we have our rumble, which, as you can hear, is just that same kick going through like this really short reverb here, and then it's being low pass, and then that's just being sidechained to the kick. So that's a pretty simple layer. And then we have this rolling bass. So the rolling bass, I've talked a little bit about this before, but I wanted to go a little bit more in depth and also kind of talk about how you would use this in the arrangement of the track, because I think this sound is really important, especially like in this part, you know, just having that like... We're going to take that away in the intro. It's kind of missing something. But the thing is, like, once you get here, you don't really want it so much. So we'll talk about that in a moment. But right off the bat, the way we're doing this sound is this is pretty simple, all things considered at least. Like, pretty simple wavetable patch where it's just these 2 wavetables kind of being flipped through here. And then we have a low pass filter. But then the key to this is all in the velocity, because if you look at this, you can see we have the velocity set to the amplitude envelope as well as the filter frequency. So what's happening here is we're essentially creating like an interesting rhythm just using the velocity. You see, by having certain notes a little bit higher, you can kind of accentuate them, and then again, it's just going to create a lot more interesting groove than just having like da-da-da-da-da-da. And that's another thing too, because this is pretty close to the psytrance bass, but that's how you get rid of that psytrance kind of sound, is making this a lot more expressive with the velocity rather than just having that same da-da-da-da-da-da-da that you hear in a bunch of psytrance tracks. And then after the synth, you see also the last thing inside the synth there is we just have some unison. Then I have this utility here to kind of make it a little bit less wide, because we just wanted to like kind of bring it back to the centers and to this part of the bass. We also have a bit of drum bus on that, and then it's just being sidechained to the kick, and then it's being high pass. And then on the groove of kick and bass, you can see we just have a bit of filtering happening here. You can see there's like a high pass filter, you know, it comes on throughout the track, and there's also this low pass filter actually for the intro, which is just kind of a nice way to bring it in. It makes the track more dynamic, because now it's kind of like building. And then when that bass comes in, it hits really, really hard. Then the next thing we have is the lead. So this lead is is actually really simple. What it is it's a really simple rhythm. It's just that same thing over and over. And then we're just changing the note here. So we're in the key of G sharp minor. So it's all just, you know, G sharp minor scale notes as you would imagine. So we're using like 5th, 6th, or excuse me, 4th, 6th, 5th, minor 3rd, and then root notes. So like all pretty simple stuff, but it's just about creating like a very catchy rhythm and melody combined. And also just kind of knowing how to use the notes to tell the story. Like we want it to walk up, but kind of create something a little bit chaotic where it plays this note, which feels a little bit odd with that root. But then like we go right after that to the 5th, which feels very just neutral with the root. So we're kind of getting like, you know, using the different voices in the scale, not just to make it a cool melody, but like to kind of tell a certain story and to like really tell the story that we're trying to tell. Yeah, because like if you just grab random notes from the scale, it's not really going to be that good of a lead. It's going to just be kind of like forgettable. So it's not quite the same. But then also just keeping it simple with the notes and like knowing when to stop, and you know, also not using too many notes. We're only using 5 notes here. Now the way that the sound is being made is it's 2 layers. So we have this first wavetable. You can see it's just like a nice fat saw wave with a little bit of unison. And then the second one, which is actually a really similar patch, you can see, but then this is being multi-band distorted. So this just adds like a nice kind of crunchy layer to it to fill it out, because if we play that other one, it sounds good. It's a bit flat on its own though, right? But then when you bring this in, it just adds that really nice like fullness to it. And so the way we're doing this is my pretty standard method of multi-band distortion. We've just got the 3 chains inside of the audio effect rack here. So the lows don't have anything. Mids, we got this nice distortion. And then on the highs, we have overdrive. And you'll notice we're always using it as like a layer with the dry wet, right? Like, you don't want to just think of this as like just dropping a bunch of distortion on everything. Instead, it's about like kind of bringing in this layer of the distorted signal, but still keeping that nice original signal as well. And then on the group of those, we just have a low-pass filter, which just brings it in and out. You can see that. We have this washout rack, which is it's just like a high-pass filter with some reverb and a bit of delay. And then also this compressor, so that's just like kind of bringing it in there, you know, making it all spacey. We also have another high-pass filter here, which just brings it in and out there. And then finally this auto pan, which is making it sound like it's being sidechained to the kick. And I studied a lot of these tracks too, as well as I made some tracks. And like, that rhythm there with the auto pan, you know, really like pumping it, so it's bouncing off in the kick, is really important actually, because a big part of this lead is not just that da 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 da, but the way you're hearing da 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 juxtaposed with like it's bouncing up on the quarter notes essentially. So it's kind of like those 2 clashing rhythms there. And yeah, then we have this break bass. It's a pretty standard like fat re-space. I'll play it with the lead. So yeah, this is just using that same scale actually. It's using notes that were from the scale that we used for the lead as well, where you can see like we're using that same 4th and the 6th, but we also added this minor 7th here. So really with these, I try to just keep it interesting. Like, you know, you don't want to just do like root note, minor 3rd, 4th, or something like that. Or like root note, minor 3rd, 5th. You know, like you try to keep it a little bit more exciting, you know. Jumping like this voice, like to the 4th there, can kind of make things like really nice. Especially when you have like a long held out note, and then it goes to that. Like you're really letting things breathe. And then that note change is going to be really impactful there. So that's really what you want to think about with the respace on. For the sound on this one, it's made with wavetables, so it's a saw wave and then the square wave, where you can see I've got a little bit of The pulse width turned up, that's also got an LFO on it. And then we have a low pass filter. And you can see that's kind of bringing this in throughout the track. It never gets all the way fully up though. You know, you don't usually want this to just be like if we turn that up, you get that raging like. And although that can sound cool in some places, you actually want to keep the bass a little bit more subdued because the bass really isn't the main thing in this break here. Then we have this high pass filter, which you can see just brings it in and out. I also have this EQ8, which is kind of doing a similar thing. I don't know if it's great enough, but sometimes, you know, you just have that because this one is meant to cut the bass at like 54 hertz, so that this way, when we get back to the drop over here, you can see the bass and that kick is going to be a lot more impactful. Also, you notice, like I said before, the rolling bass doesn't play there. That's all that is. I said I would address that. All that is just because there's a lot more synths happening here, so you really don't need the rolling bass there. But yeah, so after that, then we just have this vocal. So it's just like this little vocal one shot. I've just got it playing quarter notes here. And this is really just meant to be like a droning pad in the break. And it's just going through a low pass filter, which is being automated. You can see it's always moving, so it's very dynamic. We have an auto pan as well, which kind of makes it bounce up a little. And we turn that off. It's very just... Well, that kind of makes it fit into the beat a little bit better. We also have some reverb, and then that same washout rack just to make it disappear right before the drop. Then we have the string arp. So, this arp is actually pretty simple. Like, if you look at the notes, it's really not that crazy. But what it is it's just really building tension with that G sharp minor scale. Like, for example, here. So, we're just droning with the G sharp in the low note. But you'll notice it's constantly bouncing between 9th and the minor 3rd. So, that alone is kind of giving you this, like, you know, kind of like uneasy feeling. And then you combine that with these notes up top, just kind of constantly bouncing around. You also notice there's kind of like a minor chord to major chords happening there, like. So just kind of like, you know, keeping that in mind, like it's just all these little like kind of tricks to make this like build tension and make it feel kind of like uneasy so that it's just very well juxtaposed against the bass and the lead. And also add something a little bit more futuristic too, because like to me, you know, obviously trance leads sound cool, but you don't always want to just be trance lead or respace. You know, like I kind of find this and also this vocal to be one place where you can really get creative and like kind of do something a little bit more exciting than just like your standard techno sounds, you know? So, for the sound on this one, it's actually pretty simple because all it is it's a string ensemble. It's just a staccato string, which is probably like a sound you would never think to use in techno, but it does sound really cool, so who cares? And then what's happening is you can see I've got this arpeggiator just doing 16th notes. And yeah, because of like how long the chords are, or like how many notes are in the chords, I mean, and then also because I have the steps set to 1, we kind of get this cool polyrhythm where it's like da-na-na-na-na, da-na-na-na-na, na-na-na-na-na. Oh yeah, that adds a lot to this as well, just kind of making this more exciting. Then we have a bit of reverb, a high pass filter, and then just a low pass filter to bring it in and out. And that's really it. You also notice that, like I was saying in the beginning, like having the synth in the beginning of the track, we do have this here, but you'll notice for one, it's only playing the first 2 notes, or the first like 2 little chords, and also it's really filtered out. Like it's just in there a little bit to kind of tease you, so then when you hear the full thing here, it's very impactful. Then we have these donks, which sound like this. So these are those kind of like plucky basses you hear in a lot of these tracks. The way that these are being made is through a few different methods. There's really not like one way to do this, but it's a very particular kind of sonic texture, right? Like it's this very mid-rangey, crunchy, like juicy sort of sound. You know, like this isn't something you just get by just like dropping operator with one sine wave and then another sine wave doing FM on it. Like, you know, you really have to like try to get that like full, like nice, just kind of juicy sound. Like I said, that's the best way I can describe it, is juicy. So this first one is made with FM synthesis. It's operator. And you can see this one is actually sine waves, ironically enough. But you can see there's a little bit more detail to it, where we have this first one, and then the second one is doing that pluck with the envelope, and then the third one is also doing a similar thing. But what really makes these sound cool is like where we have these coarse pitches at. You can see if I set this back to the default, you just get like that little. You can see in particular putting that second one an octave below the first one gives you a really nice texture. And then for effects on here, we just have a bit of reverb as well as this amp, which is really helping with like the texture. Here's without it. And then with it. So that's a really good way to get that kind of like more crunchy, like juicy sound I was talking about, is amp simulation. And then just making sure to use the dry wet like I was talking about before. And then we just have a high pass filter. And then for the second one, it's made with wavetable. So it's this Ruby wavetable as well as this basic shapes, just doing a square wave. And then we got a low pass filter with an envelope. Also the oscillator 1 positions being envelope there. And then we just have some unison, a bit of reverb, actually that same amp, which really helps. Like if you're using like the amp distortion, try using it on both of these, because it'll make them sound really like close together and kind of like they fit together while still being different. And then finally just a high pass filter. And you'll notice with these also, like the way they're programmed is they're meant to bounce off of each other. That's what creates this sound, is having two of these doing that. And then on the group here, we actually have a bit of filter delay. So filter delay is really good for these because it creates these like big, kind of very full sounding delays. And kind of adds more depth than you would just get with like one echo doing 16th notes. Then we have a high pass filter, and then finally this auto pan, just to make it sound a little sidechain to the kick, but without being too much. And then after that, we actually have a bunch of more sounds kind of similar to that. So yeah, these are just a bunch more kind of similar sounds. Again, these are a little bit more kind of tucked away in the mix. The thing about these is that these are really more of like a background effects sort of element, but they're actually like right up front. But then you also don't want them to clash with the leads. So it's kind of like a lot of stuff you got to keep in mind with these. But yeah, really, like again, kind of similar technique to those last ones. It's just more like kind of making longer bass sounds and like different things than just that wow. Like this one's just an analog patch with some reverb and a bit of, actually what we're doing is we're just distorting the mids, you can see. And then some drum bass. And like this low pass filter bringing it out. We have this one. You know, just like this cool re-space I made with wavetable, another like re-C one. And this is more of a pluck. There's this pluck as well, which I think is really cool. Like, you know, again, it's not only just about creating those bass sounds, like a lot of times just making like a cool sound, you know? Just something that sounds exciting and kind of grabs the listener no matter like what it is. Which that's just like a cool wavetable patch. And then this last one here, kind of like a nice crunchy 303. We got like saw wave, bandpass filter with an envelope on it. And yeah, you pretty much know how to make a 303, I imagine, if you're watching this video. But the thing with these is just making sure you have enough. Obviously, it might seem like a lot, but you hear it in the track. Like, it doesn't clash with the lead at all. And obviously, you know, that kind of just comes down to a few things. One, mixing these right. Two, of course, making sure that you always want these to be playing the root notes. Save for this one. But even so, it always resolves itself back on the root note. So it's never going to clash with the lead. And then also just programming too, like knowing how to make these kind of bounce off of each other and not just having them like none of these are fighting for space. Like it's always like you hear one and then you hear another, and then you hear one and then you hear another. And then the last thing to keep in mind with these also is just the way that they're being like pushed around the track, because if you notice, like there's little subtle variations. Like for example, here we have this happening like that, but then here it happens a lot sooner. And like you might not even really notice that when you're hearing the track, but it does make a big difference because it's just more depth and more layers of complexity to your track that are going to make it more exciting to listen to. So then after that we have the hi-hats, which are pretty straightforward. You'll notice I have like one group for the main open hi-hat, which is actually 4 layers. Oh yeah, and then you notice there's no group processing. I just like to put them in a group to kind of tie them all together, and it makes it a little bit easier too when you're mixing it, because like you can just turn these all down at once. But yeah, just keeping those really clean I think is going to be the best way for this. Like you don't really want to do too much extra saturation and drum bus and stuff like that on the hi-hats. You really just want something like clean and nice like this that's going to work already. And we have these, which are just like, yeah, nice like shaker. This is one of my loops. And then we have the ride as well. So you know, that's just a pretty straight like going through my width rack so it stands out from the other hi-hats. And the last hi-hat we have down here is actually just this little group, which is just for the break. It's just 2 hi-hats. Yeah, just doing like that, kind of filling in the break. It's important to have something like this because it can be easy if you don't have that to kind of lose the energy. Like by the time you get here, it's like, where is the energy? So just having that, and then it's constantly filtering as well, so it's very dynamic. It's gonna make a big difference. We also have a bit of reverb automation. You can see at the end there, it just kind of disappears like that. And yeah, then we have the effects, which these are all like, pretty straightforward effects. Like we have like this cool reverb clap. It's like a clap with a bunch of reverb. I have this vocal sample, which is just one of mine that I recorded, and then I've just put it in here in that little break. There's like a nice element to kind of fill that out well, and also gives your track kind of like a logo. We also have like this little brass stab here, which is pretty similar to some of those ones I was showing you before. You can see this one's just made with analog. It's just some saw waves, detuned a little, bunch of vibrato in unison. I have like some reverb, I have a bit of saturation, some erosion. I have this low pass filter as well, which makes it a bit more dynamic. And then a high pass filter, and then just another auto pan to make it bounce off the kick. And yeah, then other than that, like we have like a little... There's also the snare which comes in and out. So that's kind of doing a bit of call and response with that clap. We have like this little sweep. As well as this white noise sweep with the operator. And then finally, the last element is just a 909 snare and just building it up. You have throughout the break. And then also right here. In this little mini break. And yeah, so that is it for the project file, and that is going to be it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe, and let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get the full project file, samples, MIDI, presets, everything like that from this video is available at the top of the description on my Bandcamp. Really helps support me if you guys are enjoying these videos. Definitely consider going to pick that up. Thank you so much, everybody, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.